Hi everybody and welcome back to Murder at Bedtime with me, Lyndon. If you're a regular watcher or listener, you know I think you are all awesome. And if this is your first time, then I hope I can persuade you to stay. And I'd be dead chuffed if you do. This is a 10 to 15 minute bedtime story. There's no waffle, all the gobbledygook is at the end. Just to say, if you enjoy this story, please like, subscribe and ding the bell for future notifications. It really does help. I don't know how it helps, it's all algorithms, but it does. And just a warning that this story does contain child murders, so if that may trigger you in any way, please just give this one a miss. And with that, let's crack on. Henry was whistling while walking down Stukeley Road. He was on his way to see fiancée Etty at her house on Neville Road. But he stopped whistling and slowed his pace as he had to pass his great aunt's house, and he wanted to avoid getting into another confrontation with her. He had been lodging with his great aunt, Alice Cornish, and her family for a couple of weeks, and everything had been going fine until a few weeks ago they had got into an argument and he had been asked to leave. Today he'd been for a few beers and just wanted to get past Aunt Alice's house without being spotted and get to his fiancée's house. But unfortunately, Alice was out on her front step, spotted him and shouted to him, "Come in for a cup of tea. You are a rum one, you are." Henry meekly followed her into the house and sat down at the kitchen table. Alice hurried around getting the tea ready, all the time berating Henry for his recent behaviour. She had just begun to say, "Well, you may as well stay for," when she felt a sudden sharp pain in the back of her head and everything went black. Henry put down the poker, picked up his Aunt Alice and took her down to the garden shed. It was then that she started to wake up and moan a bit. He looked about and saw a pickaxe, so he picked it up and hit her through the head with it. He then returned to the kitchen, picked up a carving knife, went back to the shed and stabbed Alice in the throat. He then tried to pull the rings off her fingers, but couldn't, so he cut off her fingers. Henry then returned to the house and searched for money. He found the grand total of £4, which he pocketed. He was now about to leave, but the voices were in his head again, telling him, kill them all. So he sat down on the stairs with a hammer resting on his knees and waited for the rest of the family to arrive. If Henry had either now given himself up or even been caught after one murder, he even, though acting well over the top, due to maybe being a bit provoked and his past war history, have had some sort of defence. Unfortunately, what came after really sealed his fate. So firstly, who was Henry Perry, also known as Becket? Well, he was born in Chatham in 1882 to Polly Perry. His father, a sailor, died when Henry was young, and his mother took up with a hawker called William Becket, a hawker or tinker, someone who sold things from a cart or caravan. They lived in no fixed abode and travelled from town to town in Becket's caravan. Henry joined the army, the 3rd Suffolk Regiment, in 1916, the day after he had just been released from a 5-year prison sentence for violent crimes. In fact, Henry was no stranger to violence, having been locked up on 17 previous occasions, and was very well known to the police for breaking and entering and violent crime. In the army, he saw action in Egypt and Palestine during the First World War. He said he got separated from his regiment while looking for water in Palestine, where he was shot in the leg and taken prisoner by Turkish troops. He then contracted typhoid. After recovering, he was taken to Damascus to join a working party, where he was tortured and beaten. He was also struck on the head with a rifle butt, which, along with shrapnel injuries in his head, can't have helped his state of mind. Along with this, he had also contracted syphilis. Where and when this happened, we don't know. He arrived back in the UK in February of 1919 and couldn't settle back into normal civilian life. He travelled the country trying to con people out of their hard-earned savings, and even at one time tried to defraud the army, which ended up him being imprisoned in a detention barracks for a while. To be honest, the army still hadn't decided whether he had been taken prisoner by the Turks because he had become separated from his regiment, or he had deserted. He drifted around for a few days before going to stay at number 13 Stukeley Road in Forest Gate near West Ham's old Upton Park football ground at his step-aunt's home. She was his stepfather's sister. Alice Cornish lived there with her family, Walter, her husband, and their daughters, 14-year-old Alice and 6-year-old Marie. Now, he lived there, as I said quite happily, and in the short time he was there, he had met a widow called Henrietta Sparks, known as Etty, with a 2-year-old daughter, got engaged, and their marriage had been set for the 7th of May. It was then, I believe, that the Cornishes became aware of Henry's very checkered past and asked him to leave. He drifted around for a few days until he turned up on this particular day trying to quietly pass the Cornish's house. Now, back in 13 Stukeley Road, the first person to arrive home was little 6-year-old Marie. She skipped in through the door shouting for her mother. Perry emerged from the shadows and struck her on the head with the hammer, opened the door to the cellar and threw her down the stairs. The next to arrive home from evening classes was 14-year-old Alice. In Perry's own words, he said, "I let her in, she went into the kitchen, I struck her on the head with the hammer, she fell down, and I hit her on the throat with the axe. And then I threw her in the cellar too." He then waited for husband and father Walter Cornish to arrive home from work. He hit Walter on the head with the axe, but was disturbed by a neighbour. Perry ran off. The neighbour took Walter to hospital by bus, but unfortunately he died of his injuries some time later. However, Perry had been seen by eyewitnesses and was described as about 5'5" tall, with a moustache, in a soldier's dirty uniform with blood on his hands. The police caught him 3 days later, where he had been looting in East Ham. He had spent the £4 that he stole from the Cornish's house on civilian clothes. Perry's trial took place at the Old Bailey on the 9th of May, where he pleaded not guilty due to insanity. The prosecution stated the motive for the murders was because he wanted their money, but strangely never questioned as to why he proceeded to murder the whole family after he already had the £4 in his pocket. The defence brought out 3 eminent psychologists who had assessed Perry and found him to be as mad as a box of frogs. But the prosecution weren't having any of the argument that his wartime experiences had made him into a psychopathic killer. As they said, he was already a violent man before he went to war. Perry's defence of nightmares, hallucinations, and the voices made me do it didn't wash with the jury either. And after a 2-day trial, Perry was found guilty and sentenced to death. He did appeal, but this was thrown out too. On the 6th of May, the Cornish family were buried at Woodgrange Cemetery, where thousands turned up for their funeral. Henry Perry, also known as Becket, was hanged at Pentonville Prison on the 10th of July by John Ellis. Now, it's certain in this day and age, of course, that Henry Perry would not have been hanged. But with what we now know about PTSD, I believe he would either have been sent to a mental health facility with a chance of one day being released, which would be most likely, but maybe a good barrister would have got him life with a chance of parole. In the end, I think the fact that he was such a violent man before he went in the army went against him. What do you think? Anyway, it's time for a bit of waffle. So, to all the people who aren't staying for the waffle, thank you so much. See you next time. If you've had enough of me. And if you're still here, here we go. As you may or may not know, I've started a new little channel called The Exiled Yellowbelly, which is basically just me with a video camera filming and talking about strange tales of saints, shrines, ghosts, murders, graves, folklore, and anything interesting I can find in the villages and towns of the southeast and hopefully beyond. Now, I'm really enjoying doing these vlogs and hope you will give them a bit of a try, give them a watch on YouTube and let me know what you think. You can also find me on Instagram as exiled_yellowbelly. I'll put the details down below. Please like, subscribe and ding the bell for notifications of further episodes on YouTube for Murder at Bedtime and The Exiled Yellowbelly. If you have any ideas for murders you would like me to take a look at, or strange tales near where you live, I especially love graves and graveyards. I know that's strange, but that's me. Please let me know. As you may know, I'm from Lincoln, but I live in Aylesbury and have done for the past 37 years. And Aylesbury has recently been voted the worst place to live in England, which I think is very unfair. So I've made a video of the nice bits of Aylesbury, which will be going up on the new channel too. I love doing Murder at Bedtime, so I will, as always, continue to bring them out on podcast and YouTube, where there will never be adverts, sponsors, Patreons. You don't have to buy me a coffee or send me a sticker or whatever, or any monetizations on YouTube. This will always be a bedtime story, just me and Mike, uninterrupted until the inevitable gobbledygook at the end. Please keep your messages coming in. I love hearing from you. So, see you again soon. Sleep well. See you next time. Take care. Thank you. Good night.